r/AskReddit. What scares you as an adult that didn't bother you as a kid? This is actually something I've dealt with to an extent. I busted my head in a weird ice skating incident, pretty badly concussed. The people close to me around that time said I completely changed as a person following that. Lost a lot of friends. I only have very faint memories from before and rely on others to jog my memory a bit. I consider myself lucky to not be worse, but I can't help but wonder how I'd react if I could somehow meet myself before that. Also, I didn't have ADHD before, but I do now. That's fun, mayo. Head injuries. As a kid, I thought broken bones were the big thing to worry about because I could visualize what that was. I had no sense for the severity of brain injuries. As an adult, protecting my noggin is my #1 injury concern because the human machine don't work with a damaged processor. I was exposed to death pretty early as a kid. My cousin died when we were both 12. My aunt and grandma died before I got out of high school. High school classmates died young in accidents. All my grandparents were dead before I finished college. And by the time I got out of college, my dad was already sporting gray hair and a bad back. Add on to that the fact that my parents had kids late, and my dad was already in his mid-50s before I left elementary school. I kind of internalized the my parents will die along with the rest of the older members of my family and I will be around to see it very early. My parents' deaths will be sad for me, but I don't fear it the way I would have if I hadn't seen so much death so young and known it was coming. I fear ever having to see the deaths of my significant other and younger brother much more than my parents, because I'm much less prepared for that mentally. Other people's driving. I can barely sit through a car ride with my dad now without grabbing the oh shit bar. Lack of time. As a kid, felt like I had all the time in the world. As an adult, I feel like I have no time to do anything other than work. Roller coasters. I used to ride them all summer long because I had a Six Flags summer pass. I went a few years ago with my younger sister. It wasn't fun anymore. I just kept feeling like I was going to die. I ended up holding purses and keeping my feet on the ground. I never understood why my mom would just wait for me, but I get it now. Anything related to going to the hospital. When I was a kid, I was always in the emergency room with a deep cut or broken bone. Now that I realize it isn't as free as I thought it was when I was a kid, I'll make any excuse to not go to the hospital. Case in point, my wife, before we were married, went to the ER with severe abdominal pains and found out she had an infection in her gallbladder. So they removed it. Her hospital bill, because she went out of network and had an ER visit, was over $80,000. Meanwhile, I probably would have just died because I would have crunched down 100 Imodium before visiting the hospital. As a kid, my family could never afford insurance for me, so I grew up with the mindset that the hospital is not an option. At 17, I had a seizure and my mom freaked out and called 911. As I was waking up in the back of an ambulance, my first barely conscious thought was to try to rip my IV out and yell at the paramedics that they couldn't take me to the hospital because we would never recover from the bill. Didn't even know yet if I was dying or not. I bought a house a couple years ago. Literally everything scares me now. It's raining, probably gonna flood the basement. Windy, trees gonna fall on the house. Weird smell. Probably an electrical fire. Leave the house for literally 5 minutes. Obviously going to explode due to a gas leak. I used to love flying as a kid. Then, when I was late teen/young adult, I was on a particularly turbulent flight for hours over the ocean and thought we were going to crash. 4 years after that, I couldn't fly without anxiety. I didn't want to look out the window. I'd close my eyes and mutter through turbulence, etc. Then, inexplicably, I chose a career as a flyer in the Air Force. That helped to get me over my fear of flying pretty well. Deep water. I learned to swim in it by essentially jumping into a pool on holiday as all the other kids were in the pool and didn't want to be left out. Now for some reason, if I'm in water and it reaches my chest, I'm struck by an absolute rising sense of dread. My breathing gets shallow and I feel so uneasy and upset I have to get into shallower water to be calm again. the reality of how fleeting life is. And I don't mean in the cliché live life to the fullest. I mean in the way that life really does pass quickly. I'm 3 years into college, and I still feel like I graduated high school last year. Every now and then someone will mention the new class graduating, and I have no idea who they are. Or when people I graduated with come into my work and it hits me, I haven't seen them in 3 years. When I was younger, I couldn't wait to grow up, to live on my own, travel, see the world, have a bunch of friends, have a real job. Now life is real, and it's passing quick, and realities are starting to set in that, in order to do all the things I want to do while I'm young, I better have an excellent paying job, because time is passing, and it isn't waiting for me. Performance anxiety. I was in theater as a kid/teen, was in sports tournaments, enjoyed class presentations, and even did some public speaking, and never had any issue getting up in front of people. Even when I would mess up occasionally in front of an audience, it didn't bother me. Then in college a switch flipped. I did a handful of variety shows in college, and used to perform the national anthem in college at our university sports games. I still remember the first time I ever experienced performance anxiety. I was about 21, and going to perform the national anthem at a volleyball game, and I felt it, but it didn't impact my performance. Later that year, I was singing a solo tune in a variety show, and my music cut out, and it flipped me out so bad that I had to stop the performance, which was a game changer. I'd never had an issue adhering to the show must go on, even when things go wrong. And for the first time in my life, my final presentation of university racked my nerves so bad that it impacted my ability to speak and concentrate so bad that I thought I'd fail the presentation, especially because that professor had seen successful presentations from me before. Nowadays I get flipped out even giving casual presentations in front of my small company. I'd do variety show performance again though. Losing my job. Since obviously I didn't have, or need, a job as a kid, to keep a roof over my head and food on the table, I've been laid off twice, once just before Christmas, so now I dislike Christmas. I've quit a job once, when my company was being taken over. I was a contractor, and usually those are the first to go in a merger, and I quit another time, when my manager was a raging bitch/perfectionist helicopter boss and the writing was on the board. I'm in a great job right now, the best I've ever had, and just survived a layoff round. I keep waiting for the luck with this job to wear off, and I'm looking yet again. I was never afraid of huge lorries, concrete traffic barriers, or bridges when I was young. But once I started driving, those things started making me incredibly nervous, especially bridges. One time I had to drive across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and I literally cried the whole way there, and the whole way back. This was only a year ago, and I'm 33 years old. So, I'm a teenager, so I don't really know if I have a right to comment here, but here goes nothing. When I was younger, I never really thought of future. Now, it terrifies me. Like, what if I get into college that wasn't right for me, and it messes up my career? What if I never get to travel and do some interesting stuff I really want to try? What if I end up living that average lifestyle that is making me unhappy right now? What if I never experience any form of love that I've been searching for so desperately for almost 10 years now? Future, or, to be precise, how unpredictable the future is, scares the living daylights out of me. I'm absolutely terrified of my kid dying. As a kid, I did the riskiest shit without a care or worry about what the consequences would be. Ride my bike down the side of a busy street, swim in the river, drive fast and reckless once I got my license, drink heavily with friends, still need to calm down on that one. I never thought once about what my parents would do if something happened to me. Now that I have my own kid, I'm scared to death they'll take the same risks I did, and I don't think I could ever bear that loss. It literally keeps me up at night and I occasionally have nightmares about it. My wife had cancer when my daughter just turned 2. She had to have immediate surgery to remove one of her lungs. I had to think about raising and supporting a child by myself. Losing my wife, I practiced, in my head, how I'd explain to a 2 years old that mommy isn't coming home. I read comments on Reddit all the time. I'm 40 and I still feel like a kid, or you never really feel grown up. Bullshit. You go through something where you don't even consider calling anyone for advice because you know they won't have any, and it's up to you to figure it out, and you don't want to trouble anyone else with it anyway. That's what being an adult is. You have stuff like cancer just waiting around the corner, and you know you'll be the one to figure out treatment, and bills, and keep the house, and put the kids through college. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe for more daily stories. Have a nice rest of your day.